You're tuning into the Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal podcast. If you have a story or a guest recommendation that you think others need to hear, email me at wildweirdandsometimesnormal@gmail.com. Let's get this started. Alex and Brett, kick it!
Wild. Wild. Weird. And sometimes wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. Wild. Weird. And sometimes normal.
On this episode, I'm joined by author and paranormal investigator Brian Clune. He is the co-founder of Planet Paranormal Radio and Planet Paranormal Investigations. He has been involved with numerous TV shows, including Ghost Adventures, My Ghost Story, Dead Files, and Ghost Hunters. Our conversation covers Brian's volunteering on the USS Iowa and the ghost he encounters on the ship. We also discuss his ghost hunting adventures and some of his findings. Give Brian a follow, check out his books, and let him know you heard him on Wild and Weird. Enjoy the show. Are you looking to buy a home in New Jersey, escape the city and move to the suburbs? Finally purchase a vacation home on the lake or down the shore? Maybe you're one of the lucky ones who are retiring and moving out of state. If so, let me help you. Keller Williams and the Real Estate Professional Group have what you need to make your goals come true. Reach out and have a conversation with someone who will put you first. Contact Brian McCoach at 856-321-1212 or email brianmccoach@kw.com. Are you looking for CBD for your pet? My friends at Pure Pet Wellness have what you need. They use the highest quality ingredients. While other companies may use synthetic oils in their CBD, Pure Pet Wellness uses organic ingredients, organically grown hemp, organic coconut oil, organic shea butter, organic beeswax, and that's just to name a few. A family-owned and operated company that also offers fast shipping. Go to purepetwellness.com for all your pet's CBD needs and use the discount code WILD and WEIRD at checkout. That's WILD, A-N-D, WEIRD. Treat your animal right. Go to purepetwellness.com. Welcome to another episode of Wild, Weird, and Sometimes Normal. I'm your host, Brian, and today my guest is Brian Clune. He is the author of the Haunted America series, and he is a paranormal investigator. Welcome, Brian.
How are you? And I'm kind of hoping that there won't be too much normal in here.
Well, even when we get normal, we get weird, so don't worry about that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I would say the most normal thing here, you spell Brian the right way. We have two Brians doing it the right way. We don't put this fake vowel of a Y in there in the middle. No. We use the B-R-I-A-N, the only way to spell it.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was talking to another Brian today about, being able to do the interview in the goat locker here. And he spells his name with a Y. And I just looked at him and said, well, at least I spell my name the right way.
I'll refer to them as fake Brians. The ones with the I feel like we connect better right off the bat because we have this fake one trying to infiltrate our little circle. But,
exactly.
We're all good Brians. So I appreciate you coming on. You are, from locations unknown right here. You are in a fun place right now. Where are you?
I am on board the USS Iowa. It is the lead battleship of its class. I am in the Los Angeles Harbor. We are a museum ship. And the ship is kind of interesting because it is also quite haunted. So I do love working here. Not necessarily for that, because we had talked about before the show started, I am a history nerd, and that was my main reason for being here. But it was kind of fun to find out that it does have a little bit of haunting activity.
This is just the cherry on top of the sundae. Like I'll take the history stuff and be like, oh, there's some ghosts. Like I'll take that. So before we started recording, you said you were going to go storm the quarters, and we're going to take this thing for a spin. We're going to drive live on the podcast here. Did I hear that right?
Absolutely. And I've got my water skis ready. So,
perfect.
It should be fun.
Awesome. I'll be there in no time, and I'll be drugged behind. Don't worry about it.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive in.
We'll make a stop at one of the bars in Catalina.
Hey, I don't know if that's gonna be a stop or a stay. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah. Catalina. So I interviewed somebody, and they live they're in San Diego. So they're about Catalina Island, and they just talked about to them there was interesting and weird history there, and there were some, I don't know if you have any information on this or you have thoughts on it, but they just found that place very unique to them.
Catalina.
Yes.
So one of the things that I thought was interesting, my publisher had asked if I had ever thought about doing a book about Catalina. So I did a little bit of research and I found it interesting that 96% of everybody that lives and works in Avalon, which is the main town on Catalina, claim to have ghosts in their establishments or their homes.
Really?
Yeah. So it's apparently a fairly haunted island. So one of these days I am going to have to get over there and start doing some heavy research.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So let's talk about your ship that you're on now, the Iowa. What ghost experiences have you heard about or have you experienced on there?
So my main job here, I volunteer as security. So in the mornings, I'll open the ship, I'll close the ship at night. And then I also work what is called fire watch. And what that means, when we have youth groups that spend the night, we have two people that work fire watch. So we're awake from 10 o'clock until 6:30 when we leave. And our job is to make sure that the guests are safe, that the guests aren't wandering, that there's no fires on board. So we're literally like all over the ship. And it's kind of amazing what you'll hear and see at say 3 o'clock in the morning. We have a spirit on board that we've dubbed the Whistler because he just whistles. Nobody's ever actually seen him, but you'll be walking through one of the passageways and you'll just hear somebody whistling a tune. We're not even sure what era he is from because he will whistle tunes from the 40s, 50s, and we've even heard him whistling songs from the 80s. So we're not really sure exactly who he is, but he seems to be in a very good mood. He whistles a lot. A couple of days ago, I was opening the ship and I was the only one on board, but I heard snoring coming from the bunks. So, thinking, okay, well, I wonder if a homeless person got on board or something. I better go check this out. I followed the snoring and there was nobody there. So, we've had all kinds of weird little things like that. Nothing majorly spectacular. We do have a spirit that we've named Shaft Alley John. He is an African American gentleman who passed away during the construction of the ship. And the reason we call him Shaft Alley John is he passed away down in Shaft Alley, and he is known to haunt that area and the area of the decks above it. And he's actually been seen by guests and crew both. And he seems to be a nice guy. So, no worries. We don't have any spirits here that are harmful or anything, but maybe a little mischievous. We have a redheaded kid in the Admiral's Bridge who likes to turn the lights off on the kids when we're doing night tours. But other than that, it's pretty interesting and nothing overly scary.
So you have Chef Alley John, that's what his name is, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you have Chef Alley John and you have this redheaded child. So
Well,
you're
not a
seeing
child.
Oh, I'm
Not a
sorry.
child. He's a former crew member.
Oh, okay. I thought you said redheaded kid. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I and at my age, everybody's a kid.
Everyone's
now.
a kid. It could be
But
20, it could be 5. I wasn't too sure where we were going with this.
he has actually shown himself to me twice. Once I was trying to close up the door, and pardon the whistle, these go off every once in a while. And I was trying to lock the door and I was having trouble getting the padlock done. And when I looked up, he was staring out the window at me. And it was just like really brief. And I was kind of like, it kind of startled me, but there wasn't anything harmful in it. There was another time in the bridge when I reached around to turn one of the light switches and he grabbed my hand and pulled my hand off the light switch. And then there was one other time that I had just shut the lights off and I was walking from port to starboard to go out the door. And I look at one of the windows that I was walking toward and I could see him behind me. And when I turned, naturally, there wasn't anybody there. And it's just little things like that. And I didn't know who he was, but one of the gentlemen, he's like third in charge of the ship today, was on board during the Turret 2 explosion when 47 sailors lost their lives. And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, he's a redheaded kid. He goes, "I know him, but he won't tell me his name, and it's driving me crazy." It's like, tell me his name for Christ's sake, because I open up in the morning and I just say, "Yeah, good morning, kid." So,
Do you think you could interact with him more? Do you think this is something controllable, or this could be?
so I've tried, and the only thing I can say is I was pulling out the signal flags for the overnight group. And the signal flags are stored in the flag bridge. And that's where this sailor, spends most of his time. And we weren't planning on having an overnight for about, if I remember right, about 2.5 months. So I was up there, I got the flags out, I went back to put the chains up, and I told him, I said, "Hey, kid, we're not going to have anybody here for a while at night. So if you want to have a little bit of fun with the scouts tonight, you go ahead. And if not, just, scare the hell out of them." And that was it. Right. So I get a radio call at about 9 o'clock, and it's one of the tour guys. And he goes, "Brian, do you know how to turn the lights on the bridges?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I turned them on earlier." And they're all, "Yeah, but they both went off at the same time and scared the hell out of the kids." And neither one of the tour guys knew how to turn the lights on. So I had to go up there. And for both of the lights to go off at the exact same time, they're 2 decks apart. So it was like, yeah, no. So
Oh,
I
wow.
just thought that was kind of so. I was kind of wondering. It's like, I guess he listened to me and decided to give the kids a little playful scare. So it was kind of cool.
When you first said that the ship was haunted, I didn't know what to expect, and then I was going to ask, like, what are the normal noises that you hear, like just during the day or throughout, an experience? Because it's on water, and there's waves, even like little ones, wherever it might be, and just creaking and everything. But now you're talking like full body apparitions. Do they look whole? Like when you saw the redheaded kid through the window, did it look
He
like a
looked solid.
person? Did it look solid? Okay,
Yeah, he looked solid. And then when I saw him behind me, it was kind of hard to tell because all I was seeing was a reflection.
right.
However, excuse me, a few years back, two of the guys that I work with had been tailing a tour down on what is called Broadway. That is third deck. So it's 2 decks from Maine. And at that time, it was fairly restricted for anybody going down there because we hadn't completely opened the ship yet. That's how long ago this was. Now, the 2 security guards had stayed down there to make sure that nobody had gotten left behind on the tour group. And they did their final sweep to make sure nobody was left behind. And they came up to second deck. And they said that they looked down and they saw a sailor staring up at them, but that he was wispy, is what the term that the one tour, or I'm sorry, security guard used. And we were like, "What do you mean wispy?" And he goes, "Well, we could see through him." And we were like, "Okay." And now we were back up on main deck. According to the one security guard, I'm saying one, there were 2 of them, but I'll get to the other reason why it was only one that said something. He said that this spirit that they said was coming up the ladder to second deck. So they hightailed it down to the aft ladder on second deck, but they said that they could see him following them down the passageway on second deck. He had come up from third deck and was following him. They got back up to main. They said they looked down the ladder and they could see him. He wasn't coming up to main, but he was just standing there staring at them. Okay. Now, the 2 security guards could not have been any different. The one who was telling the story was like a little kid who had just gotten his favorite toy. He was, just rattling off what had happened. We're just like staring at him, just getting amused. The other security guard, we looked at him and we were all, "So is that what happened?" Now, this is a direct quote from the other security guard. And we just lost it. We just started, he could not even talk. And we are just cracking up. He's getting madder and madder as we're cracking up, but he still couldn't talk. He was that nervous about seeing this spirit. So seeing the 2 together was just hilarious. And yeah, we don't let either one of them forget that,
Yeah, I'm sure,
moment.
not everybody believes in ghosts, and even if you do, it's hey, if you see Bigfoot in the woods, like, what are you going to do? Are you going to run or are you going to like try to talk to him? And even if you're like, oh no, like I'd be fine with the ghost. And then all of a sudden you start seeing a sailor who's not supposed to be there. Like I'm sure they could, that's why you have the opposite reactions, but that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I said, it's actually kind of fun. Like I said, once you realize that the spirits here are just, you know, guys like you or I, and they're like, not harmful or anything. It's just like, yeah, we just sort of consider them crewmate. So
And you can take an extra break. You're like, oh, Chef Alley John's got my shift. Don't worry about it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think? Yeah, I was probably gonna get this later in the episode, but we'll just do it now. Like, what do you think? Why do you think they're trapped there? Why do you think they're there? Like, do you think this is like an in-between world for them?
That's always the question, isn't it? And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of paranormal investigators do what we do is specifically because we want to know is are the spirits trapped or are they here because of their own free will? Is somebody keeping them here? We really don't know. I think in a lot of cases it's free will, but whether that free will is driven by the fear of the unknown or because they're just comfortable in a location, it's hard to say. With the spirits here, other than Shaft Alley John, most of them we believe are from the turret explosion in 1989. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but on April 19th, 1989, the middle gun of turret 2 exploded and it killed 49 men in the turret and the barbette leading down. We do know that the redheaded kid is from turret 2. And that comes from the gentleman I was talking about, who is still a crew member here, who said that he knew of, he was a friend of his. So, I'm not really sure. I do know that, like on the USS Hornet, I've been up there and investigated. I've also done research on the Hornet for a book, and I'm doing more for a new book. They're there still doing their job. And I think a lot of that might have to do with their dedication to their duty. If you look at most of the military ships that are museums here in this country, I don't think there's a single one that is not haunted. And most of them all have similar stories that the guys that are still there are still doing their job. So whether, it's a residual haunting due to some trauma and it's just, like a videotape on the ether, or whether they're there still literally doing their job because of their dedication, it's still hard to decide, why they're there. So, that I think that's why most of us, who are actual investigators rather than ghost hunters are still doing it.
Yeah, that why is a big thing. Obviously, but it's like, did they not have the proper closure? Like, so that's her two explodes. Like, you didn't go to work that day or report for your shift or whatever it might have been. I mean, you never really expect to die, but at the same time, maybe that was like just such a violent, unexpected thing that like they haven't fully processed it.
Yeah, and
Even
that
in
could
the
be part of it.
you
Yeah.
know, and then time, you, you know, time exists here just so the trains run in time, but like there is no time. So to them, this could be 3 minutes after it just happened. And for us, we're looking at it like, oh, it's been, 89. So that's been
Right.
30 years. It's been 35 years, but for them, that could be a blink of an eye.
Yeah, and that's one of the things too that I've always found kind of fascinating. And I'll use an actor by the name of Ramon Navarro. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He
His
started
name, I
off,
don't know.
he was a contemporary of Rudolph Valentino, and he was actually one of Rudolph Valentino's lovers. A lot of people don't know that Rudolph Valentino was he was either bisexual or homosexual. No one's really positive of that. But Ramon Navarro was brutally killed in 1969. And his home, after his death, he was killed at his home by two idiots. Let's just say criminals are not the smartest people in the world. They had seen him on Johnny Carson, and Ramon was talking about he had just finished remodeling his house, and he said, "Well, I've got $5,000 in my living room alone." Well, they thought he was saying that he had $5,000 hidden in
They thought
his.
cash as opposed to
Yeah,
just, redoing it. Oh, my kitchen cost
exactly.
$80,000 or whatever it might be.
Yeah, exactly. So they beat him to death trying to find the money. Okay. So he actually stayed at his house after his death. At one point, I don't know if you remember Connie Chung.
Oh yeah.
Uh, she tried to do an interview there. She did manage to get the interview done, but a lot of her crew left because Ramon Navarro was still there, kind of messing with them. So the last people who bought his home decided, well, enough of this ghost stuff. We're going to tear the house down and we're going to get rid of the ghost by doing it. Well, as a lot of people know, that doesn't necessarily work and could actually make things worse. So they tore the ranch house down, built this new house, and now Ramon is still there, but now they see him walking through walls. Instead of just being in the bedroom where he died or, out in his living room, he will literally walk through the wall to get to where he's going. So to me, that shows that to the spirits, at least, there's something different. They're not seeing the current
Layout of the
out
home.
of the home. They're still in their old home.
Right. He thinks he's walking down the hallway, and you're like, he just walked through the bedroom wall. It's like, no, that's his
Exactly.
hallway. He was going to the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. So
That's fascinating. My small ghost experience that I've had. My aunt had a new construction home in Pennsylvania, and we would go there on the weekends, especially in the summer. She had an in-ground pool. It was beautiful, little McMansion type thing. And she had an extra bedroom, so we go up there with my parents and my siblings. We just kind of crash on the floor around them or go sleep in the basement, whatever it might be. And the one morning I woke up, it's probably 6 o'clock in the morning, and I hear a vacuum downstairs. And so, go downstairs for breakfast, and I see my aunt, and I was like, "Why were you vacuuming at 6 in the morning?" She's like, "Oh no, you heard the ghost. You heard the ghost." So I kind of thought that they were joking a little bit. And her husband comes down. He's like, "Oh no, no, we have a ghost." And there were times we would sit around the dining room table for breakfast or lunch, whatever it might be, and everybody in the house is in that room, in the dining room. And you would hear somebody walk down the stairs. You could hear the steps creak of the body weight shifting from step to step. And it would get down to the last step, and you would turn around expecting them to turn, because it would lead to the little hallway, little entryway, and nobody was ever there. Like, oh, that's the ghost. That happens all the time. So it wasn't a malicious ghost. It wasn't really playful. I mean, I guess the vacuuming. It didn't really vacuum. There were no vacuum lines when we went down there, so he wasn't being productive. But he wasn't malicious or anything like that. But also, it was a new construction house, so maybe they ripped down something before to put it there. I'm not too sure what the development was before then, but that ghost was just haunting that that land.
well, I hope you guys trained her to actually use the real vacuum.
If it was my
Yeah.
house, I would have like, hey, do some chores, pick up
So-
this stuff, do the laundry. But
And
I
here's the
don't know.
feather duster, go over there.
Yeah, just do it. I don't care how you do it. Just get the cobwebs up there. I'm not climbing up on a
Yeah,
ladder.
then you'd start to wonder, okay, why are these books falling on my head when I was trying to sleep?
Yeah, that's it. You're not going to pay the ghost, not slave wages here.
Ugh.
But I always found that interesting. That was, and that was even like, I guess it was real because it happened. But I would say on the level of experiencing a haunting, that was pretty low.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But that's another one of the things that I have always found fascinating is the I don't know if you want to call it time displacement or what you want to call it, but the fact that some spirits are still to them, say in the medieval times, and that they haven't moved on yet. Other spirits from the same time period have kind of grown with the times, and they're now doing things in a modern way rather than still back in their medieval times. It's really kind of what is the difference between the spirits? Is it mental? And I know that sounds weird, is it mental for a spirit? But you have to imagine that in a intelligent haunting, as we call it, that they're still thinking. So is it a matter of them being so stubborn that I'm not changing, or them going, hey, this is kind of cool, I'm going to change for modern times? It's just another one of those things that I hope I can find out at some point before I die.
I was going to say, I think we're all going to find out.
When I do die.
Yeah.
So
I think we're all going to find out the answer. You just hope to do it before, you
yeah,
get the main answer, right?
exactly.
So, and and again, this is all just speculation, like obviously, and I think this might go back to the suddenness of the person's death. Maybe they're not ready to, they don't realize that they're not there. Whereas opposed to if, you're slowly, whatever it might be, you die
Yeah.
in your bed, you have cancer and you're bedridden, whatever it might be. And there's a choice somewhere, possibly, at that time, like follow the light or stay here. And at that point, that person's more aware of like making that choice.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, there's a spirit on the Queen Mary. Planet Paranormal, that's my team. We actually dubbed him Grumpy. We're not positive of his name, but the reason we call him Grumpy is he likes to growl at people. He's relatively harmless, but every once in a while, you'll be walking through the pool area or somewhere close by and you'll just hear, "Bleh." That's Grumpy. Okay.
Is he
We,
seasick?
we're not sure, to be perfectly honest with you. But I joke about the fact, and pardon the vulgarity of it, but he broke my paranormal cherry.
Uh-oh. Someone has to do it.
So, yeah, somebody had to do it. He growled right in my ear when I was in a 3 foot wide corridor, and my earlobe vibrated. Okay, everybody else was cracking up, said I ran, but I will never admit to that.
I walked with purpose
I did. I walked with definite purpose
to get out of there.
But we had a psychic, and I'm not big on a lot of psychics because I think there's a lot of frauds out there, but there are some legitimate ones. And the person who mentioned this, I believe, is legitimate. He said that he was a murderer who had murdered and we believe there was a prostitute murdered on the ship at one point, and we believe this was the guy who did it. And he committed suicide as they were about to arrest him. Okay. And he did it underneath the stairs in the first class pool area. So the psychic also mentioned that he's not going to move on, that it is his choice because he is afraid that if he moves on, of where he will end up. So, because of his guilt over murdering this prostitute, he's afraid that he's going down rather than up. And so
So
he's sticking around just to hedge his bets.
just to stay in the in-between world.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
Which to me is not a bad choice considering the option.
Right. The alternative
Yeah.
would probably wouldn't be that great.
Yeah.
Little warmer, possibly, but then maybe stay on the QE. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's not that not that uncomfortable here in sunny California. So
Yeah. So there have been times I wish I could pull the stories up. There's two stories. One was a child, and he had all these memories of this actor, Hollywood actor, but from like the 50s. And the gentleman was kind of obscure, but the kid like knew the guy's entire life story, knew the siblings. I think they even introduced the child to the sister of the Hollywood, not a star, a Hollywood actor who passed away. And like she confirmed a lot he was saying, like nobody would even know that. Like it's not in history books, like he didn't make Wikipedia. And so they were like, well, this kid's reincarnated as him. And that was interesting. And another one was the child was born and grew up a little bit, and he went to the police and solved his own murder. I don't know if you've heard
I
either of
haven't
those
heard that one. I
stories.
got to look that one up.
Yeah, I'll try to find that one up. I can shoot that over to you. But he went and like only something, two people would know it: the guy who was murdered and the guy who did the murdering, and was able to connect the clues for the police and led to the guy's arrest. So
Yeah. Well, I don't remember her name, but it occurred over in England. It was a girl who, as she was growing up, she would tell her mother these different things, and her mother was like, "That sounds really familiar." And over time, she started to realize that what her daughter was telling her were things that she had heard from her grandmother that had happened to her grandmother's mother, so her great grandmother. And that there was no way that her daughter would know any of it. So she started to believe that her daughter was actually the reincarnation of her great grandmother. And I mean, I'm kind of up in the air as far as reincarnation goes. I don't know one way or another. Just that some of it makes sense, other parts of it don't. And you can even go biblical if you want, as far as reincarnation, because the Bible was kind of written by men with all of their prejudices and everything else, and a lot of it's probably parable. If you consider that the human body is basically 95% electricity holding together 5% of matter, and that your thought patterns are nothing but electrical impulses. And physics proves that you cannot destroy energy, and our body is energy. Where does that energy go? So who knows whether, ghosts are just still here because they haven't found a suitable body to inhabit. And that could be everlasting life, is the fact that we just keep moving on. People say, well, then how come there's more people here? Well, you look at the universe, there are, pardon me for sounding like Harlan Ellison, billions and billions of planets out there. And let's face it, some of them have people on them. So
Has to be, or some type of life form, that has the same electricity.
yeah, exactly. So who knows? Maybe we're reincarnated from this planet over there, and then we move over here, and then we decide to stay here, or we decide, hey, let's try this planet. Who knows? I mean, it's a big mystery. So
Yeah, I go back and forth on, what happens after death. Like hey, would it be nice if there were the pearly gates and St. Peter's there and he's checking his clipboard and I'm there. He's like, hey, Brian, come on, come on board. Like, great. And you see your family and friends, like, at what age are you seeing these people? And like, that gets a little weird too with it. But then, hey, we're also all energy. So do we go to this all encompassing light and just pureness of light and everything else? And as I just told you, two stories that, I mean, very lightly prove reincarnation of these people knowing things that they shouldn't know and
right.
coming out. It also seems that if that was possible, there'd be a lot more, even just your circle of friends, wherever you talk to, wherever it might be, like they're like, hey, like I have these like weird dreams, like that are like seem so real, I have like these weird memories that like definitely didn't happen in this current lifetime. But I've never had those conversations with anybody, and maybe I'm not having the right conversations. I also just feel like they would come up a little more. A lot of the taboos, even through 80s, 90s, and early 2000s have really been broken. And a lot of the things that were fringe or unconventional, or you don't, the secret handshake, make sure you guys talk about the same thing. Like, hey, you like ghosts? Oh, I like ghosts too. But now it's like pretty normal to just talk to anybody. Be like, hey, man, I'm a ghost hunter. Oh, I have a podcast and I talk about ghosts and Bigfoot and UFOs and anything else. I feel like you just hear a lot more of that, and like we just really don't.
Yeah, exactly. What? I have sort of a weird way of thinking about death. I've had friends whose spouse have passed away, whose brother or sister has passed away, and who I've been close with, and I don't get all broken up. And it's not that I'm happy about it, but to me it's like, okay, well, in my own mind, I know 100% fact for myself that, yeah, we go on. We can go on. In what form? I don't know. So I know death is not an end. I also know that when I die, I don't want people to feel bad. I want to have a good old fashioned Irish wake. I want everybody happy and drinking, because guess what? I'm not paying bills or taxes anymore.
Celebrate it.
Okay. So it in a way, being a paranormal investigator has actually been helpful as far as my views on death. Now, let's face it, I am still terrified that I'm going to have a bus run over me, slam the brakes on, and smear my body. But, other than that, you know, the death itself is kind of like, okay. But it's weird because a lot of people look at me and like, well, why aren't you sobbing? Why aren't you crying because so and so died? I'm like, because, there's a good chance I'm going to be talking to him later. So, I know it's kind of a weird way to look at things, but yeah,
That's part of that's part of your job of what you do. If you're out there, investigating paranormal, you're running across, it might not be people that but you're running across people, spirits, entities that somebody did know. So that kind of gives that that eternal hope. And we also talk about energy, isn't destroyed, and time, 100 years here is like forever sometimes. And then I look back, I'm like, man, I'm this old already. Like I still think I'm in high school sometimes. It's just crazy in a blink of an eye. Like I have a crystal clear memory of doing something with friends in high school or college. It's like, man, that was 20, 25 years ago. but it went by in a blink. And I look at my kids, I'm like, how are you this old? Like, I was just holding you. Like, I was just at the
Yeah.
hospital with you. And like, this is crazy. So the 100 years here is long sometimes. And also it's super fast other times. And like
Right.
knowing like, hey, wherever it is at the end, like, pearly gates, stay here for eternity or go to the big light in the sky and decide to come back or just, have the best seats in the house to watch the, Earth 2024, the best program on television.
Yeah, exactly. And, like what you were saying about memory, memory is nothing but an electrical impulse stored in your brain. So where do those impulses go when the brain stops working? You cannot destroy energy. All you can do is change it. So it has to go somewhere. And who's to say that the thought patterns don't coalesce? And that is what a spirit actually is that condensed memory and thought and everything else. One of the things that I get a kick out of is the way ghosts are. Now, I don't television ghost shows. I've been on quite a few of them. I'm not a big fan of them because they don't really know. Well, I can't say they don't know what they're doing, but because of the way entertainment has to work, they have to change things. So we do know that ghosts need some sort of energy to be able to manifest. Okay. Now, the way they do that is to draw in the energy that's surrounding the area. Okay. That's why batteries will go dead. That's why, you'll get cold spots because it's drawing all of the energy in that they can. And let's face it, heat is nothing but energy. So as it draws the energy in from the heat, you get a cold spot. That goes along with the thought patterns and thought processes needing that energy to be able to expand. But one of the things that drives me crazy about that is when you see on these ghost shows, oh, there's a cold spot. Oh my God, look, the EMF is spiking. There's a ghost. No, if the EMF was spiking, it would be putting the energy out, not drawing it in. And I mean, that literally drives me up a wall. It's like, okay, you have an EMF pump to put out energy so the ghost can use it, and you're worried about the EMF going up. What? It's like, yeah, sorry.
Well, you have a half hour of television, well, 22 minutes, whatever. You had some commercials in. If it is the episode of, hey, we're going to go explore the Iowa and look for ghosts, and 22 minutes in, like, we didn't really find anything. Maybe tune in next week. We're going to go somewhere else. Don't know if anything's happening there either. So you have to give the people a little bit of the crumbs. I think the ones who tune into that are kind of looking maybe for a little more of that, as opposed to if you're doing general, legitimate,
Right.
not that these people
Now,
don't do legitimate, but you're doing general, legitimate science research into it.
now don't get me wrong. I'm not, and if it sounds like I am, I don't mean to be bashing these TV shows because they are entertainment.
Right. Well, that's
And
it's
right.
entertainment.
So, but if you look at the first 3.5 seasons of Ghost Hunters, what you were talking about is exactly what happened. Oh, we didn't find anything. Tune in next week. Oh, we didn't find anything. Tune in next week. Oh, we didn't find anything. The first 3.5 seasons was like that. Every once in a while, they would go, "Oh my God, look," and they would find something. And that is more akin to legitimate, real ghost hunting. I tell people when they say, well, what's ghost hunting like? I said, well, it's basically sitting around for 3.5 hours talking to yourself, twiddling your thumbs, and nothing happens. Well, then why do you do it? Because in 3 weeks, I'm going to be at a place and something's going to happen and I'm going to go, oh my God. Right. So it's that one tiny bit of evidence that you get that makes it worth it. I know that sounds kind of weird, but here's the thing. If it was true, and this used to drive me nuts on Facebook, you would see somebody say, oh my God, I just went to this location. It was the most haunted place I've ever gone to. And then the following week, oh my God, I went to this place and it was the most haunted place I've ever gone to. And week after week after week, every single place they went was the most haunted place they'd ever been to. My team actually put up a post at one point that said, we must be the worst paranormal investigators in history because nothing ever happens to us. Right. But it got to the point where I was thinking, if I went somewhere and the activity was just off the hook, I'd be excited. But if next week I went someplace and it was off the hook, I'd be a little less excited. And after about 5 or 6 times, I'd be like, okay, this is so common, I don't even care anymore. But it's not. It's a lot more rare than what television shows or than what Facebook shows or Instagram or any of those. And that's what makes it, at least for me, still exciting because, 99% of the time I go to a location and there's nothing. But then there's that one time where it's like, oh, wow, okay. And this is why when we get home cases, we will tell the client, look, we're not going to be able to come in and give you an answer in one investigation unless things start flying through the room. Then that's a definitive. But because ghosts are just dead people, they don't act on cue. So, it could take months or a year or more before we can gather any evidence to say, yes, you're haunted. But if we don't have anything after a year, we're going to probably tell you your house isn't haunted. And there's probably a mundane reason for what's going on. So, it's one of those things where you have to kind of bring the critical thinking into it rather than just assume that everything's paranormal.
Right. I interviewed Eric and CJ and Collectus Obscurium, and they are paranormal investigators in New Jersey, and they're saying the same thing as you. Like they'll get called to a home, and they go there like, oh, did you see like the light bulb surge? Like, did you see the energy? Like, well, we have to go check your wires. We have to go check this. We have to see what's happening. Like that doesn't mean anything. But then
Right.
some of these people, I think they're trying to look to turn it into either like a tourist attraction or like sell something, and they get annoyed like, what do you mean this is like, please just tell me. It's like, I want you to. And it's like, well, I want to tell you it is, but also like I need to make sure I'm doing everything right, like we take this seriously. And he's like, and most of the times it's not haunted. He's like, very rarely, because
Yeah.
it's not on demand. It's not like, hey ghost, we're here to check you out, and like, oh, you heard 3 creaks over 3 months. Okay, well, I'm coming here Friday at 2 p.m. What are the chances that that creak is going to happen that you heard over 3 months times 24 out, all that time is going to be very hard. But if you show several times, maybe something. So that makes it difficult. But also, like, that's like the scientific method that I think is appreciated in something like this. I've seen those same Facebook posts of people who every time they step out their door, like everything is haunted. Do you
Yeah.
think that some people more receptive than others, some people less scientific than others, but go stay in the woods in the middle of the night? You're probably going to freak yourself out in the dark. Every shadow, every twig crack, you're like, what is happening in the woods? Do you think as these people go here that every creek is a ghost? Do you think that every shadow they see is a ghost? Like, what do you think is causing some of these people? Now, it could just be exaggerations, but I mean, what do you think is causing that excitement for them?
So
Undue excitement.
I don't know whether you noticed, but earlier I separated the terms paranormal investigator and ghost hunter.
I
Okay.
did.
Now, one of the reasons I do that is a paranormal investigator, and of course, this is just my opinion. I mean, I've been raked over the coals for it, but to me, a paranormal investigator is somebody who goes out to find the evidence, to find what is going on, why it is going on, not to necessarily, bring it to the world, but to for themselves and for those like-minded individuals who want to know. A ghost hunter to me is somebody who wants to go out and have a thrill. They want to get scared. They want to go to a haunted location and then tell everybody that they went to a haunted location. And a lot of these ghost hunters are so desperate to have something happen so they get that thrill that they will create the thrill themselves. This is another area where I've received a lot of derision is my views on orbs. Orbs are not ghosts. Why people think something this tiny is a human spirit is beyond me. The, I have never seen a ghost photo that I could not disprove. Or I'm sorry, an orb photo. You'll look at a photograph and there's one orb, and I'm looking at it going, okay, polished table, polished lamp. There's a mirror over there. There's a painting over there with glass on it, and you're just looking at all of these reflective surfaces and a flash on the camera. Guess what? You're going to get an orb there. And there's also a reason why before digital cameras, orbs were basically non-existent. You would get them every once in a while, but it was extremely rare. The orb phenomenon did not come out until digital cameras. There's got to be a reason. Did all of a sudden ghosts decide, oh, now that there's digital cameras, I'm going to be an orb? You know,
The technology improved, and we are capturing them on another level now. You don't have your old Kodak with the flash sticking straight up. You jam in the top.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's their way of fulfilling their "I found a ghost" desire, if you will, where an investigator will look at that and go, I see all of these shiny things that are reflective. So, I need proof that that's a ghost. And they get their critical thinking skills going. Okay, well, wait a minute. So the flash is over here. I can see the flash in the mirror over here, which directly translate to the orb being right here. So it's more of looking at reasons rather than just wanting to go out and have your adrenaline spike, if
Right.
that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. It definitely does. I wouldn't say there's so many times. There are UFO stories of people looking out their kitchen window and they're like, oh, I see a UFO over there. And there's times I'm getting a glass of water or doing the dishes or whatever. And I'll look up and it's catching the reflection in the window of the light behind me. That just has you do a double take for a second. I'm like, what the? And you're like, oh, just this the light
Yeah.
behind me. But hey, if you take a picture of that and the color scheme is off and everything, you make anything look like anything. But you need to go in there with that eye of disprove, disprove, disprove until the very end. You're like, well, I've done everything I can, and that thing is still there.
Now, I have seen a UFO, and
Let's
I
hear it.
wish I would have had a camera at the time, because there is no doubt in my mind that it was not terrestrial. And the reason I say that is it was probably about as long as this ship. It was completely rectangular. So it wasn't rounded at all. It was just this long flying rectangle doing maybe 2 miles an hour.
Is
So
this
I'm
in
sorry.
California?
Yeah. Something square like that doing 2 miles an hour is going to fall, but this wasn't. And all you could hear was a little. So I have no idea what it was, but yeah, I don't believe it was terrestrial. And it had little lights on it and, stuff like that. So yeah, I was kind of a believer in UFOs. Well, I shouldn't say UFOs. That just means unidentified flying object, alien craft, shall we say, from pretty much that moment on.
Well, the Pentagon just released their report the other day, their entire Arrow background they were doing on it, and UFOs do not exist at all, and they have terrestrial explanations for all of it. Like, well, thank God the Pentagon went out, and it's just like when I forget who just had an investigation, they investigate themselves to see if they did anything wrong, and they're like, nope, we were good. It's like, okay, great, yeah, it's absolutely amazing. You don't want people.
Really?
You can trust us, yeah. But you talk about something as big as us flying. There's the triangle crafts that they had in Phoenix. I think in '96 they talked about. There are the pilots were going off North Carolina or South Carolina. Admiral Graves. I'm sorry, I think I have his title wrong, but he was flying up and he just did his testimony in front of Congress. And he's like, we fly up and there's a circle with a Cuban side of it, and it's there waiting for us. But he's just completely mistaken. And this is just terrestrial technology that I've never seen at an air show. I've never seen paraded down Main Street or anything. Like, where is this stuff then?
Yeah. Now, granted, some of the stories from years ago were because of the skunk works, the SR-71, the F-117, the B-2 stealth bomber, and things like that. Sure.
Man, you see that fly above you in real life, and you know what it is, and you're still like, that's UFO. Those
Yeah.
the B2 that you see it, that thing is gone, and then you hear it afterwards. You're like, man, if that thing was dropping a bomb on you, you'd be so dead for minutes before you would even hear it.
Right. But those all have one thing in common. they're all seen around Nellis Air Force Base, which is how the whole Area 51 came up, because that is where the skunk works were, and that's where the Air Force, Navy, they do all of their tests on their advanced aircraft. But then when you get to things flying over Canada or Kansas or, all of these other weird things that are nowhere near Area 51 or any kind of air base, you kind of have to start going, okay. So yeah.
The
The one
Hobby
thing
Lobby balloon in the middle of last year that took two Sidewinder missiles to shoot down, like that one.
like that one, yeah.
Yeah, that guy was just a Boy Scout $200 balloon. Like it took $800,000 in missiles to shoot down a Boy Scout balloon. Like maybe we should put them in charge of
Well,
our defense, though.
the pilot could have just had really bad aim.
I I guess, yeah. So when they first came out with the 2017 New York Times story about the Tic Tac video, and then Graves seeing the one off of the as they would take off and run their flight patterns. With that, I did start thinking, is that really military? Because if you understand the rules of engagement and then also maybe what you told them they can do, like, hey, we're not firing anything today. You see anything, make sure you call it in. Like, you can't just go shooting stuff without permission. Maybe it gives it more of, hey, let's play tag with these guys. Let's see what we can do with it. Let's see, if we were going up against something and not have to worry about losing our $1 billion prototype.
Right.
But now you start
Um,
flying over other places, and you're in Canada and the U.S., and you're dealing with multiple air forces, and you're over the Middle East and whatever. It gets a lot less contained.
right. The one thing that, as far as extraterrestrials goes, I really don't think that they have ever actually stolen Aunt Maisie and her cow, to be honest with you. Any creature that has the technology to get here wouldn't need to, first of all. And they would most likely end up, like, if they had originally arrived in the United States, would most likely go and talk to somebody either at the Pentagon or somewhere in Washington. If it was in Russia, they would have gone to the Kremlin or, something like that. They're not going to go, hey, we just traveled, a billion light years. Let's go check out the cow. That always just kind of, I thought, not unless they really wanted a ribeye.
Hey, you never know. Maybe that's
That's
what we're
true.
advertised for on like the worldwide Yelp. Like, hey, go to Earth, get a ribeye.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Betty and Barney
that
Hill were in upstate New York, rural New York, and they were abducted and taken and lost time and things like that. But always happens at night. It always happens to just one individual. Superior technology. Like they could come down the middle of the city and just zap somebody if they wanted to. And like, what are you gonna do about it? But
yeah,
like, that never happens. It just seems like there's too many human rules happening with like UFOs with stuff like that. And it's like, okay, is that made up? Is this just like your mind shuts down? Like people can go through horrible traumas and block it out of their heads and never
yeah,
recognize that it even happened. And is this part of it? Is this covering up something else that was happening? I find that interesting.
yeah. And maybe one of these days we'll know. The Our government is not exactly forthcoming with certain things, shall we say? And for all we
Anything?
know, there could have been, maybe Aunt Maisie and her cow were used for medical experiments, for all we know, from our own government. It just seems silly to me to think that creatures with that kind of technology wouldn't just go directly to the source and say, hey, you know what I mean? It just, I don't know. Something just seems off with it.
Do you think with Ghost that there's anything with, multi-dimensional, the whole Spider-Verse reality we live in now, in either, so other dimensions, other universes kind of bumping up, like bleeding through? Do you think there's anything with that? Or do you think this is all Earth-based, you know, this is it right here, and the ghost that you have, you're dealing with in the world that it existed?
So, quite a few years ago, there was a Darkness Radio event. I don't know if you're familiar with Dave Schrader.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know the name.
Yeah, Dave used to put on fantastic paranormal conventions. And he had put on a couple at the Queen Mary, and I had sat down to listen to one of the speakers. And I'm sorry, I cannot remember her name, but she was a physicist. And her theory was that what we believe we are catching in EVPs are actually not spirits, but snippets from another dimension. That what we are picking up on are actual living people that just are not within our dimension. And she said that, and this does happen quite a bit when you get a lot of EVPs, you will hear a little pop before the EVP starts, and then another pop as it ends. And it was her theory that those pops are a break within the dimensional walls. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but to me, it's a feasible explanation for some of it, not all of it, but some of it. So, yeah, there probably are other dimensions, but what exactly those other dimensions entail, I really couldn't even begin to understand.
There was another interview that I did at the same gentleman from San Diego, and he was bringing up that during the Vietnam War, when they started with night vision goggles, they were using this red phosphorus type, and they had to discontinue the version they were using because everybody was seeing UFOs and things that weren't there. And then they moved on to a different type of red phosphorus and then eventually to the green type. But they had to stop, I guess, whatever mixture or whatever technology they were using with that because people were, I don't know, seeing too much of the real world, seeing too much of the other world, seeing too much of something.
Have they followed up to see if these people are in mental institutions?
Yeah, I don't know. So I asked, I was like, well, where can we get this? Like, can I go to a army surplus store and get this? And, apparently they're all tens of thousands of dollars on eBay.
Oh, so
Really
you can
good
actually
ones.
still get them. So they weren't toxic or anything like that.
Apparently they weren't toxic. They were just showing a little too much of the truth. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So during your paranormal investigations, you had the rumbling in your ear, which is very legitimate. What are some of the highlights? What's some of the juicy stuff? What have you seen that has really made you question, I guess,
So
reality?
visual is extremely rare. Now, I have seen an apparition, but only one and only half of it. There used to be a place up in Clovis, California called Wolf Manor. It has since been torn down. It was on some of the TV shows. But my buddy Bob and I were breaking down our equipment and we were in what was called the black room. The reason is it was painted all black because Todd Wolf, the one who owned it, would turn it into a haunted house. And at Halloween time, he would bring the Clovis High School in to be the scare actors. And then whatever money he made on it, he would give to the high school drama department to kind of help, fund them. So Bob and I were in there and we're breaking down our equipment. There was a table that was facing the wall. I was facing out. Bob was facing the wall, and he all of a sudden he goes, and I kind of looked at him with this weird look. I'm like, "What the hell was that?" And he goes, "Dude, there was a face that just appeared right in front of me." And I was literally right in front of him, and I didn't see anything. All right. So I'm kind of like going, "Yeah, right, Bob. I'm standing right here. I didn't see anything." So I turned to our buddy Tom, who had just walked in the room, and he was just kind of off to my left. And I look up and I'm like, "So, Tom, do you believe what?" I look over and I just stared. Bob looks over at me and goes, "What's wrong with you?" Tom, what's, and he does the exact same thing. Here, both of us are looking at a solid pair of jeans, tennis shoes, and a belt. Nothing else. No torso above the jeans. And it was literally as solid as both Bob and I were. And as we're standing there, just kind of our mouths agape, going, "What the?" It just vanished. That is the only time I've actually ever seen a spirit. However, the most spectacular thing that ever happened to me was the first time I spent the night on Alcatraz. My team, it was myself, Bob, Ash, and Laurel. That was our team. But there were only four of us, and we had been in the medical isolation ward, and we kept hearing chairs moving. So we went in and we sat down, did an EVP session. Didn't seem like we were getting anything. We walked out. Heard the chairs move around again, walked back in. The chairs were now in a different place. Sat down, did an EVP session. Again, we didn't feel like anything was going on. We walked back out, heard the chairs a third time. We walked back in. Now the chairs were back in the exact same spot where they were when we originally went in. So we thought, all right, we're going to sit down one more time, but if we don't get anything, we're out of here. So Bob is asking questions. And at one point, Bob says, if you don't want us here, just let us know and we'll leave. So Ash at the time was about 320 to 350 pounds. We were sitting in folding metal chairs. And those are the chairs that had been moving around when we couldn't see them, but we could hear them. So we're sitting there right after Bob says, just let us know and we'll leave. Ash's chair with him sitting in it goes, slides back about 3 feet, hits the wall. He gets thrown out of his chair. And at the same time the chair was moving, we hear, get out.
Wow.
So we were like, yeah, I think we'll get out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we definitely left, but that's probably the most spectacular thing that's ever happened. I've never had anything happen even close to that since.
I'm picturing like the Scooby-Doo when they get scared, they're kind of running in place and you see the dust flying behind them and finally they take off. That's how I'm picturing how quickly you guys left.
We may have done that, yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, Alcatraz was something else. We spent the night on Alcatraz twice. The first year we were there was 2009 or 2010. I can't remember exactly which. And the activity was off the hook. The following year, we got very little activity. We did catch some of the same spirits, two of them. One of them was a child that sounded, well, it was somebody who sounded like a child who said his name was Jacob. And then another was a nurse who had passed away from a typhoid epidemic down in the original pit, which was the original jail during the Civil War. And we caught her both years talking. So, but other than that, the second year, there wasn't much going on. So, but I would love to go back.
Do you find any of the experiences that you have are tied to like seasonal or, like moons or, whatever it might be?
So the Queen Mary, my team actually had an office on board in room B332. And we were literally down there pretty much every night. It got to the point where we were so well known that security would see us coming and they just go here and they just hand us the keys because they knew we weren't going to do anything to harm the ship or we weren't going to break anything. We have nothing but respect for the Queen Mary. And we discovered that, yeah, there's a little girl by the name of Jackie. She's about 5 or 6 years old. We believe she passed away sometime in 1946 during the bride and baby cruises after World War II. And she is relatively vocal. However, we discovered over about a 2 to 3 year period that around December 9th of every year, she gets really active. And I mean to the point where you cannot go down to the ship, say the 8th, 9th, or 10th, without her being everywhere, without her talking audibly. Not even an EVP, but talking audibly. So we were like, well, this is weird. I wonder why. And then when I was doing research for my Ghost of the Queen Mary, I was like, oh, well, hell, the last day the ship, the Queen Mary, was ever in service was December 9th, which correlates directly to the time when Jackie is her most active, December 8th, 9th, and 10th. So
Fascinating. I thought you were going to say you found a birthday. That's fascinating that that the ship's energy is transferring to this little girl, or she's able to manipulate or do whatever with it.
yeah, well, it might have something to do with the fact that she was already a spirit on the ship when the ship was retired. So for her, it may have been like, no, I don't want to stop sailing type of thing. I mean, we really don't know. So, but yeah, we love going down there around that time period because Jackie's something else.
It sounds like if you go down on December 9th, that's the time to go. That sounds
Yeah,
fascinating.
definitely. So
Have you ever had an experience where maybe you rethought your career purpose here of like, maybe I don't want to do this anymore?
no.
No? Okay.
Well,
No, no,
okay,
no
no,
bad ghost or anything?
no. So we did. We do not think ghosts are demons. Ghosts are just people. They're just deceased people. But we do know that demons exist. We had one case that was given to us. I'm not going to say his name because he's very well known. His aunt and uncle were the Warrens, and he gave us a case with this girl who was just obsessed with him. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because we just don't have the time, but let's just say that the most those of us who dealt with the case, and we ended up dropping the case because she would not go see a mental health professional. We're actually really careful about things like that. We told her before we could take the case, you have to be cleared by a mental health professional, because we weren't going to go in and start, investigating. You're saying you're possessed, or sister was saying she was possessed, without knowing that you are mentally stable, because we could make things worse, and that's not something we wanted to do. So we're really careful about how we approach home cases. But let's just say that things progressed to the point where we started getting a little bit nervous about things that would happen. So we completely backed out. And I'm not even going to go into it, but Christmas Day, let's just say that something happened to the last three of us that hung on to the case longest, that we don't ever want to happen again.
Oh, all right. So Skinwalker Ranch, there's the TV show, and it's a famous place, and Bigelow owned it, and apparently there's activity. There's a lot of things happening there. There have been scientists who've talked about like this piggybacking, that as they leave the property, something attaches to them and follows them home, and experiences at their once quiet home are now bubbling up with activity. Have you ever you know experienced this? Have you ever researched something like this? Have you run across this?
Oh, I've researched it, and I have tried. Boy, have I tried to get something to attach itself to me and come home with me, and I cannot do it. I and again, this is my own belief, and I'm not saying it's, definitive. I believe that things attaching to you are just another way of people saying, I'm a warrior, type of thing. If spirits were that strong, we'd all be attached. We'd all have a spirit attached to us. There is a certain television personality who once a week gets possessed. And I'm thinking, dude, if you are so weak willed that a simple ghost can possess you, stop doing it. If ghosts could possess people, guess what? We'd all be possessed by ghosts. I mean, think about the millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people who have died over the years who may be ghosts. If they could just simply possess us, why wouldn't they? It's just one of those things that, none of it was really that talked about until television. After television, all of a sudden, people were having attachments. People were having, ghosts come and visit them and dropping things on their heads. And, it's just, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I have not found any evidence. And you're talking to somebody who has literally invited ghosts to come with me, and they will not do it. Maybe I smell, but I mean, if after, a few, 20, 30,000 hours of investigating, I cannot get a single ghost to attach itself to me while being invited. I mean, maybe it's me. I don't know.
We could try some new methods here.
Yeah, something.
So
So
this question just popped in my head. Say pass if you want to not even answer it. I believe it's Pentecostal churches where people speak in tongues, and they, the spirit of the Lord inspires them, and they start going through, religious, what, enlightenment, whatever it might be. I'm sorry, I'm not fully versed in their entire aspect of their religion. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is this just the belief in their religion that they're experiencing? Do you think that there is something more happening?
So I was about half a heartbeat away from the seminary when I got out of grade school. Luckily, women were prettier than priests. That's we'll just put it that way. But I was brought up on a relatively strict religious background. So I've done actually quite a bit of research into religions and things like that. And like with the Catholics, I am now what would be called a fallen Catholic because it was like, all right, you can't eat meat on Fridays. Okay, go ahead and eat meat on Fridays. No, you can't eat meat on Fridays. Yes, you can. No, you. And it's like, look, if you guys can't even figure out your own tenet, how are you going to tell me, what's going on? You have people in religions now who follow the King James version Bible. That is the main Bible, which is fine, except for the fact that it was adapted by a king who wanted to put the Church of England foremost and in front. So it's got things that were changed. The Douay Rheims Bible, which is the Catholic Bible, has books in it that no other Bible has. So you have all of these religions telling you different things while saying they're all true. And it's just one of those things where, if somebody asks me a question, I'm one of those people who I'll just blurt it out. I'm very opinionated as far as, things like that. Years and years and years ago, I went, let's just say this girl was really, really cute. Okay. And I had asked her out and she said, okay, let's go out on Sunday. And I was like, absolutely. So I went to pick her up and it turns out we were going to church.
Lucky you.
And yeah, it was one of those churches where they were speaking in tongues. Okay. And I mean, I got in there and none of it made any sense. Some people were drooling and they were doing this and doing that. And I'm just like looking around going, wait, what? But I kind of, stayed around to see what was up. And once they started or stopped speaking in tongues, they all sat there and listened to the pastor or whatever you want to call him. And so I'm listening for a while, and all of a sudden he starts calling the Virgin Mother a whore. He starts saying that Joseph was a pimp, and just all of this stuff. And I'm just kind of like, but by this time I was already kind of out of the whole religious thing. I have my own beliefs in God. God and I are mates, as the term goes. So I do believe, I have a strong belief in God, but not a strong belief in religions. And it dawned on me. It's like, okay, well, why are you speaking in tongues and then throwing out everything, calling yourself a Christian sect while bashing everything Christian? So whether that was Pentecostal or not, I didn't stick around to find out. But it was just one of those things where I was really bummed because, like I said, she was really cute.
That was a deal breaker, though.
That was a deal breaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
And her family was wealthy to boot. Oh,
You could go back, you could overlook it now. You're like, nah, it's not so bad.
yeah. I don't think my wife would like that.
Yeah, well, of course, yes. Mrs. Clune would not be happy. That was not part of it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was not in a Bible that I ever read. So that's very interesting. It almost seems, like a front for a religion, and almost like a demon, the Satanism
A
sect.
cult or something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
The way I look at people's beliefs, whatever they want to believe is fine with me. My buddy just recovered from inoperable cancer. I know that, but it's a long story. I won't go into it. And because of that, he found God and he has gone really heavy on the God side. And I was like, okay, that's fine. He goes, yeah, there's no such thing as ghosts. Every ghost is a demon. I'm like, okay, that's your belief, not mine. Well, God doesn't want us. I'm like, Bob, I'm a recovering drug addict who woke up one day and just stopped. No withdrawals, no nothing. God just told me no more. Right. And then God told me, hey, start writing. I write ghost books. If he didn't want me doing it, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd probably have OD'd a long time ago. So that's why I say, I have my own beliefs. but he gave me all of his equipment, so I'm not too upset.
You're like, oh, that kind of worked out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now pushing your beliefs on someone else, that gets to be that slippery slope and, push back. And,
yeah,
I think we can
exactly. I
all,
mean, if somebody wants to be an atheist, let them be an atheist. If they want to believe in God, let them believe in God. Let them believe what they want. It's their choice. And there's nothing wrong with that choice. So
this was the good old days at the dinner table. You didn't speak of politics or religion, could just ended up turning into an argument. Like, hey, we can all be friends if we leave these two things alone. But, unfortunately, it kind of seeps in from everywhere. And
yeah, unfortunately, religion, I don't really talk about politics. Well, it's fun to wear spaghetti. Never mind.
it, it's it's tough. It's infiltrated like everything. It is, man, it's madness out there sometimes. On whatever side you're on, it's just like, wow, all right, sure. So what books are you working on? What do you have coming up? If somebody wanted to do home a home visit, have you do a home visit? Do you take on new clients? Like, how does that work? Six
Yeah,
questions for you. I'm sorry.
all they have to do is contact Planet Paranormal, and I think it still goes to Bob, but then he'll just forward it to me. We do have a fairly extensive preliminary form that we require people to fill out, and it does get rather personal. It goes into drug use, medications, alcohol. We had a home case quite a few years ago, and they did fill out the preliminary. And when I was going through the preliminary report, the the client was saying that the spirits would play with her feet and tug on her feet and massage her feet and things like that. So I started checking into the medications and found out that the medications she was on were for restless leg syndrome.
Hmm. That is
So
not a spirit.
so my first thought was, okay. And I didn't make up my mind because I didn't want to skew it either way. I was just thinking, all right, chances are this has something to do with her restless leg syndrome. So we went up and we did the investigation. And just as an FYI, we never charge ever. If a paranormal investigator is charging, they are a fraud. Because how do you prove something that can't be proved? So, it's one of those things I always warn people to say, if a paranormal investigator is saying, hey, I'm going to charge you for this, run, because they're going to charge you for it. Then they're going to tell you you have a ghost, whether you do or not, and then charge you to get rid of it. So,
I've seen that movie, Ghostbusters.
yeah, there you go. All right. So, anyway, we go up there and we didn't really, sense anything. And it was a long drive. It was about a 700-800 mile drive to go up for this investigation, rent a hotel, the whole shebang. We told them, all right, and it was a woman and her granddaughter. So we did the investigation. We told her, okay, it'll take us a few days to, get any evidence if we got any, but we'll send you a report as soon as, we have anything to tell you. We get halfway from Jackson, California to where we were staying, and we get a call from the woman saying that we made things worse, that now things were flying around the room, vases were being aimed at her and her granddaughter, and that it was just out of control. So we said, all right, we'll be right back. No, 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 you do not come back. They would not let us come back. So we're like, okay, well, this is weird. I mean, if we made things worse, wouldn't you want us to come back and see if we could? But they said, absolutely no. If you show up, we will call the police, yada, yada, yada. So we found out later that her granddaughter was an avid ghost show watcher, that her granddaughter had been telling everybody at her high school, she was 14, that their house was extremely haunted and that they were going to have ghost hunters up there who were going to put them on TV. So we were kind of like, okay. And because, I mean, when somebody tells you that things are flying around the house, the first thought is, what? Because to be honest with you, after 30 some odd years of doing this, I have never seen that, not once. So we were a little bit leery as soon as she said, no, don't come back, because we weren't that far away. So this is the reason we do the preliminary report. Boy, I just went off on a tangent there, didn't I?
No, that was perfect. It sounds like the way you begin your investigations is just like I was talking about Eric and CJ from Collectus, that they find out their entire backgrounds, and it's like we don't want to waste your time, we don't want to waste our time. We want to make sure we're on the same page. And if there is any type of, if you're taking medication, it doesn't disqualify you. But I also need to know that if you're on bipolar medication, like is this stuff happening when you're not on your medication? And not that it's not happening, but like
Right.
maybe that's not for us.
Exactly.
Right.
And here's the thing. We've had a couple cases that we were pretty sure right from the start were not paranormal. One of them was a Marine Sergeant Major, and he had said some really odd things that celebrity lookalikes were following him, that somebody had drilled holes in his ceiling and put cameras in there, and that they were all spirits from beyond. So when we went down for the preliminary, we were thinking to ourselves, okay, what are we getting ourselves into? We go in there, and he actually turned out to be a really nice guy, but we were thinking, okay, this guy's kind of off his noodle. We go in there, and there's literally trophies along his wall from all of his martial arts competitions in the Marines that he won. So we're like, oh God, I hope this guy does not get violent. Okay. So after the interview, we realized that there was something not quite right mentally with him. So when we got back the following day, we called Camp Pendleton, which is where he was retired, but he was still under the care of the Marines. Well, it turns out that I don't know if you remember, but during the Gulf War, there was Oliver North was in a helicopter
Mhm.
convoy, and one of the helicopters right next to him had exploded
Right.
and blown up. Well, it turns out that this Marine Sergeant Major was in the helicopter next to the one that blew up. And he had his best friends were in the helicopter that blew up, and he ended up with major PTSD. So once we contacted the base, we were put on to his doctor, who said, "Thank you. We will check and see what needs to be done." And about a month later, we got a letter saying, "Thank you. He is getting the help that he needed. He was off his medication," and yada yada yada. So we don't deal with just ghosts. If we find a mundane reason, we're not just going to say, "Oh, sorry, no ghost. We're out of here." We'll try and help them even further if we can. Like like with this Marine, we weren't going to just bail on him.
Right.
He needed help, and we were in a position to where we could get him the help. So it's for us, it's more about helping people and not just the ghosts.
Yeah,
If
that,
that
that
was
that's great. Prior to the PTSD part of the story, I was very excited about celebrity clones following him, and I needed him on my podcast. But now that it took that angle, I'm glad he got the help that he needed, that's really awesome that they reached out to you guys and,
yeah.
and let you
Tom
know.
Tom Tom Cruise had been following him everywhere he went, which we were thought was kind of cool until he said, "Yeah, but he's a clone." We're like, "Oh, okay."
You never know. You never know.
That's true. This is
Yeah,
the U.S. government.
yeah. You see interesting C-SPAN videos, and people look like they kind of have masks, and there's wrinkles right around the neckline. And it's like, it doesn't really seem too normal.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff. But Brian, I do appreciate your time. Can you tell me what you have in the works?
So right now, and the manuscript will be going in at the end of this month, Haunted Heart of Los Angeles. That one was a little interesting because I got to do a bunch of research on the Hotel Cecil. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but
I know the name, yeah.
that's where Elisa Lamb had disappeared for 19 days and was found in the water tank
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
later on. That's an interesting one. A lot of people don't know how Dodger Stadium came to be, or the Dodger Stadium is actually quite haunted. So I managed to get that in there. There's some really interesting stuff about Griffith Park, the zoo, and everything else. So I'm kind of thrilled about that one. Although that was a challenge because I was right in the middle of writing another one. My publisher said, "Stop writing that one and write this one. We need this one done." So I'm like, "Okay, thanks. You just made me miss 4 months." So that one's in the works. I'm also working on a non paranormal book, Murder and Mayhem Hollywood. which has some of the more grisly, unfortunately, serial killers and things like that in Hollywood history. And I am working on Haunted Northern California as a companion to my Haunted Southern California. So,
Okay,
got a
awesome.
few things in the works.
Yeah. You're welcome back anytime. When you finish the Hollywood one though, I definitely want you to come back. I want to hear some serial killer stuff.
Well, look up the Sunset Strip Killers. That one
Okay.
is like what, let's just say what the man did with a frozen head is beyond belief.
Oh.
Yeah.
Have you
That was my thought too.
yeah. What's the Hollywood hotel, that hotspot? The Chateau.
Oh, the Chateau Marmont.
Yeah. You ever do anything with that or
I
like weird stuff
did.
over there?
I have a book titled Hollywood Obscura. It's a little different than most of my books. Most of my books are location based. Hollywood Obscura is actually people based. And I did write about the Chateau Marmont in relation to, oh my God, the Blues Brother. My brain just stopped working.
Oh,
Belushi,
oh,
John
yeah,
Belushi.
yep.
Yeah, because John Belushi haunts there,
Really?
which is kind of interesting. Yeah, that's where he was found. OD'd was at the
Yeah.
Chateau. So
He still
and
haunts there to this day. Just
he haunts there to this day. Yeah,
wow, fascinating.
and most people are familiar with the Black Dahlia.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I do have the Black Dahlia in there, and I cannot take credit for the theory, but I do believe that the person that I wrote about as far as being the killer actually is the killer. And no, it is not Hodel. He
Hmm.
just hated his father. So,
Okay. Wow. All right. I'm gonna have to check that one out. That's awesome. What is the best place for people to find you?
best place to buy the books would be on Amazon. Just put Brian Clune, and all of my books will come up. And it's also the cheapest place to buy them. So, and anybody that is in the Los Angeles metropolitan area, if you want to come down and get a signature, I will be at the LA County Fair every weekend selling my books. And that way you can get a signature. Then we could talk ghosts or whatever you guys want.
Awesome. Okay. And you're on Instagram, right?
I am.
Okay. What's the handle
Uh,
for that?
Author Brian Clune.
Okay. Awesome. I will put all this in the show notes. I sincerely appreciate your time. I had so much fun with this. I hope you did too.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, again, two
Let me
Brian's with an
talk.
I. How can we not have fun?
Yeah, exactly.
I
And
kept cutting you off though, so I'm sorry.
oh, don't worry about it. If you haven't figured it out yet, I'll just continue on with once you're done.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not a problem. I like to talk.
Yeah, we jumped in. We'd agree. This is a great episode. I sincerely appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Anytime you want to come back, open door policy.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a great night.
You as well.
All right. Bye. All right, everyone. That was our show. Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you stream your podcast. Like and follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date in all things wild and weird. Check out the links in the show notes for more information on our guest. The biggest support you can offer is to tell everyone about the podcast. Until next time.